Hello and welcome to Gefet in Hadran in the Daf Yomi. I'm Yael Shimoni from Yeshivat Risha, and together with Hadran, we're learning every week one Rashi and Tosfot to take our learning of Bekius a little bit more into depth of the understanding of Gemara and Rishonim. So today, we're going to discuss an interesting topic, which is a very big topic when you learn Be'iyun. The statement, En ed na'asa dayam. A witness cannot become a judge. Why can't a witness become a judge? When can't a witness become a judge? We will learn this through the Tosfot on the Sugya, and we will discuss a few options of understanding this statement. So let's begin and look at the Mishnah in Daf Kafei. The Mishnah in Daf Kafei describes all kinds of special situations where people see the moon, the Levana B'chidusha. People know because they saw that the moon has just come up and it's Rosh Chodesh. So who's seeing the moon? The third part of the Mishnah discussed a specific situation. Ra'u shlosha vehem betin. Three people saw the moon, and these people are basing. These people can be basing on their own because they're part of the Sanhedrin, and you need three people from the Sanhedrin to make the Chodesh a Rosh Chodesh. What happens if three of them see the moon? Do they need other people to come and tell them that they saw the moon? Or can they use their own sight and decide that now it's Rosh Chodesh because they saw the moon coming up? What says the Mishnah? If three people saw the moon, they can't do everything on their own. Two of them can become the aid, the witnesses, and one of them can become one of the three dayanim, the three judges that can discuss and decide that this edus is true, and therefore today is Rosh Chodesh. That's what the Mishnah says, that you cannot take the three people who saw the moon and turn them into a beit thing. No, they have to break up. Two will be witnesses, and one can be part of other two people to become three who are beitin. The Gemara reads the Mishnah and says, from this Mishnah, we learn that an aid can become a dayan. A witness can become a judge. How did the Gemara learn this from the Mishnah? Let's look at Rashi, and he will help us understand. Rashi says the following. An aid, a witness, can become a judge. A person who can become an aid can also become a judge. All these three people can become an aid. They're not an aid right now. An aid is a person who's actually standing in front of Beit Din and talking to Beit Din, describing what he saw. So these people are not an aid yet. They're a demon potential. Because they can be a demon potential, they can choose. If they want to be aiding, they can be aiding. If they want to be judges, they can be judges. This statement is interesting in the Gemara because we're talking about a very specific judgment. The question whether or not we saw the moon and whether or not it's Rosh Chodesh. But what the Gemara is saying, that we learn from this Mishnah that is talking about Kiddush HaChodesh, a rule that applies to all Eidus and Dayanu, to all witnesses and all judges. And here it's a little surprising, because if you would ask me, I would say if I saw something, I cannot be the judge of the scene that I saw. If I saw somebody kill someone, for example, if I saw somebody steal for someone, for example, can I be the judge in that case? That doesn't make sense. It's surprising. But here the Gemara says, yes, we learn this idea from the Mishnah that is not discussing someone who saw stealing or saw murder, but somebody who saw the moon. That's the offering of the Gemara, to understand the Mishnah as a Mishnah that teaches us the rules for all kinds of iduyos and all kinds of judgments. Let's continue in the Gemara and see that the Gemara remains with this assumption, because the Gemara says, Leima matnitin de lo Rabbi Akiva. Maybe this matnitin is in machloket with Rabbi Akiva. What did Rabbi Akiva say? So let's look. Rabbi Akiva in the Baraita brought here is not talking about the moon. He's talking about murder. Says Rabbi Akiva the following: a Sanhedrin that saw a person kill another person, some of them become aiding, and some of them become dayanim. Sanhedrin who saw a murder can split up. Some of them will be the witnesses and some of them will be the judges. That's a very surprising statement. This statement is the statement of Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon says, in such a situation, it's exactly like the moon. You can split up. Some of you can be witnesses, some of you can be judges. Rabbi Akiva says no. Rabbi Akiva says no. All of them are witnesses. They cannot change positions. If they're witnesses, they can't become judges. So the Gemara said maybe Rabbi Akiva is also disputing with our Mishnah, because our Mishnah, talking about Kiddush HaChodesh, said that you can become a judge. So maybe Rabbi Akiva and the Mishnah are in opposition. Continues the Gemara and says, no, they're not opposites. Why? Afilu tema Rabbi Akiva. Even if we look at Rabbi Akiva, that looked as if he's questioning or going against the Mishnah. That is not true. Rabbi Akiva is talking only about murder. Rabbi Akiva talks about dinei nefashos, because in dinei nefashos, in murder, God said that you have to find something in zchut of a person who might be condemned to die. Vehitzilu ha'eda. If you're an Eda, if you are judges in Dinei Nefashot, you have to do all you can to find a zchut for the murderer. Why? Because we really want to do as much as possible not to use a death sentence. So we will do anything in our possible minds to find a way out of condemning this person to die. And says the Gemara, Rabbi Akiva thinks that if the Sanhedrin actually saw a man murder someone else, they won't be able to find a zchut for him. And that's why only in Dinei Nefashos, Rabbi Akiva disagrees, and only in Dinei Nefashos he thinks that a witness cannot become a judge. But in all other dinim, a witness can become a judge. Rashi here on this passage helps us also to make one point very clear. Says Rashi, this whole discussion, if a person can become a judge if he's a witness, is not talking about a person who actually spoke as a witness in Beis Din. If you choose to speak, you can never change positions. Doesn't matter if it's the moon or if it's nefashos. Speaking as a witness closes the door for you to become a judge, says Rashi. And as is true about all dinim. The only question which is being discussed in the Gemara, says Rashi, is if you saw a situation and you didn't speak yet in front of Beit Din, you're only a witness in potential, but not a witness before, not a talking witness. Therefore, you can still choose and become a dayan in all dinim according to the Mishnah and Rabbi Tarfon, and not in the Nefashot according to Rabbi Akiva. Up till now, we worked with the Gemara and with Rashi, but I want to look at the Tosfot, because the Tosfot says something different in reading of Rabbi Akiva and also adds a few more interesting points about the rule, when can an aid become a dayan. So the Tosfot begins by asking a question on Rabbi Akiva. As we saw before, the Gemara said that Rabbi Akiva thinks that only dinei nefashot, only if the Sanhedrin saw a murder, only then they cannot become judges. But says the Tosfot, if you'll open Masechet Makkos, Daf Yud Beis Samud Aleph, you will see that Rabbi Akiva there says the same statement, but he chooses a different pasuk. Why is that a problem? Let's look at the pasuk that Rabbi Akiva chooses to learn the rule that an aid cannot become a dayan in Makkos. Says the Tosfot, Rabbi Akiva and Makkos learn from the pasuk Ad omdo lifnei ha'eda mishpat. If you will open that pasuk, you will see that it does not talk about a person who murdered somebody in cold blood. It talks about rotzeach b'shogeg, a person who accidentally caused someone to die. Obviously, if a person accidentally caused someone to die, you can still look for a schut for him. It's not the same situation as a person who murdered cold-bloodedly. Why? Because a person who was rotzeach b'shogeg is not killed. He goes to Ir Miklat. He's not killed. So you don't have to look for a special schus to save him. How can it be that there in Makot, Rabbi Akiva says the rule from this pasuk, and here in Rosh Hashanah, he learns it from a different pasuk? That's the question of the Tosfot, the classic Tosfot question. Let's look at Tosfot's answer. Says Tosfot, Beyash Lomar, the Ikar Derash Amehatam, the real pasuk, or the Ikar Drasha, where you learn the main idea that an aid cannot become a dain, you've learned that from a person who accidentally killed somebody, not from a person who killed someone in cold blood. So, why do we need two psukim, says Tosfot? Not to say that it's only in nefashot, only in cold blood murder. No, it's in all areas that a person hurt another person's body. So, in order to not take this pasuk and say any kind of mishpat has to be only with an aid and not a dayan, so the Torah and Rabbi Akiva chooses two psukim. Let's explain this again. If I would learn only from one pasuk, I would think, okay, one pasuk tells me that any rule, any law, any mishpat, an aid cannot become a dayan. I would have thought that also in Dinei Mamonos and also in Eidus of Kiddush HaChodesh, an aid cannot become a dayan. Because if I have one pasuk that talks about one Eidus, I will take that pasuk and learn for all the Eidus. But if I have two psukim, and these two psukim are specific of only part of the laws of Beis Din, and these two psukim talk only about nefashot and chabalot, and not about mamonot, I will learn that this rule that an aid cannot become a dayan is not relevant for dinei mamonos, and it's not relevant for kiddush hachodesh. It's only relevant in this group of judgments. Let's call this in Hebrew malkot, or what the way I usually explain is that I checking whether or not my body was hurt or my bank account was hurt. If my bank account was hurt, an aid can become a dayan. But if it's my body, an aid cannot become a dayan. That's what Tosfot says in explaining Rabbi Akiva. Rabbi Akiva takes a whole part of the dinim and say an aid can become a dayan there. But in the whole area of dinei mamonos and everything else, an aid can become a dayan. Why would Tosfot say such a thing? Let's look a little bit at the idea. Why can't an aid become a dayan, according to Tosfot? If an aid saw somebody hurt my body, so when he comes to Beit Din and says, Yael is chayav, he is saying that I did something which is very, very chamor. I'm hurting another person's body. There, I have to be objective as a judge. I cannot change positions, becoming an aide and then becoming a judge. But when I saw somebody do something to somebody's money, I am not as emotionally involved, and I can choose whether or not I'm an aide and whether or not I'm a dayan. So this is just a savara to understand why Tosfot says that Rabbi Akiva thinks that this idea that an aid cannot become a dayan is not only in the nefashot, but it's in the whole realm of somebody seeing somebody hurt another person's body. I'm continuing in Tosfot because he adds a few more details regarding when does an aid become a dayan. Says the Tosfot the following: if you will go and learn Masachet Ktubos Daf Kaf Aleph, you will see there that we have a few more rules. When can an aid become a dayan? In Eidus HaChodesh, which is Eidus Deoraita, an aid that is seeing, an aided potential can become a dayan. But in Kiyum Shtarot, which is the Rabbanan, even an aid that's actually talking to Beit Din can become a dayan. This is a very interesting thing that the Tosfot is saying. The Raisa, I have a problem. I have to choose. Am I an aid or am I a dayan? The Rabbanan, I can be a person who does two things. I can be a multifunctional person. I can be an aid in the same basin as a dayan. Why is that? That's what Tosfot said here. And continues Tosfot and says, in Dina Nafashos, even an aid that sees cannot become a dayan. So we have three different areas with three different rules. Eidus Dioraita, that an aid in potential can become a dayan. Eidus in Nefashot, that an aid that is seeing cannot become a dayan. And anything that is the Rabbanan, even an aid that's actually talking and being a real aid in Beit Din, using his potential, can become a dayan. In order to understand these three rules that Tosfot states at the end of the Dibur Matchil, let's look at the big Tosfot in Masechet Ketuvos, which will explain to us why we have these three different rules. So I'm opening the Tosfot in Masechet Ketuvos, and the Tosfot there explains any edus which is deraita has a problem. There is a special statement in the Torah that tells you that you must choose whether or not you're an aid or you're a dayan. If you're an aid in potential, that's fine, you can choose. But once you decided on which seat you're seating, you cannot change seats. Why is that? The Tosfot brings two answers. One answer in the name of Rashbam, and another answer in the name of a Yesh Mefarshim. Rashbam says, I'll tell you why in Edus Deoraita you have to choose a chair. Because there's a pasuk, Ve'amdu shte anashim lifnei Hashem. Two people stand in front of God. There are two different figures in the bet din, a judge and an aide. You have to choose. The aidim stand in front of the judge. You can't change seats. It's a gzerat akatuv, says Rashba. The Tosfot continues and says, other people don't go with Rashbam. They don't think that it's gzerat akatuv. They think there is a savara, an idea behind saying that in Deraisa, you cannot change seats. Why? Because if it's an Edus Deraita, an Edus Deraita has to stand in another rule. An Edus Deraita always has to be an Edus that in potential can be claimed to be an Edus Sheker. How does that work? There is a din called Edim Zomimim. If two Edim come and say, they saw me, Chas v'chalila, steal, it's a very interesting statement, but if two other people will come and say, this may be right, maybe Yael did steal, but you were with us on the day that you claimed that she stole, then these Edim are psulim, these Edim are zomimim, and this Edim will have to pay me what they tried to make me pay. Any Edus Deoraita has to be an Edus Zomemet in potential. And if it cannot be an Edus Zomemet in potential, it is not a real Edus. Why is that? Because Edim are very strong in the Torah, and they must have somebody who can hold them back in case they're lying. That's an Edus Deoraisa. Says the Es Mefarshim, if Yael, you will be the aid and the dayan, you will never be able to accept somebody who will say that you were saying a lie, because you're a dayan. Can I really accept an edus that will go against my edus if I'm also an aid and also a dayan? No way. And that's why you have to choose. If you're an aid, that's fine. And then other people can claim that you're lying. And if you're a dayan, that's fine, because then you'll listen to people who come against your aiding. So these are two different explanations why in all the edus of the Araisa, you cannot change your seat. You have to choose where you're sitting. Continues the Tosfot and says, that's all true in edus de Araisa. But if we're talking about edus de Rabbanan, we don't have these rules. We don't have Gzerat HaKadosh of Rashbam, and we don't have the need to have an edus that you can claim that is a lie. That's only a need in edus de Araisa. And therefore, in all the other edus, which are the Rabbanan, you can sit in two different seats. Continues the Tosfot and says, all this is true in Dinei Nefashot, in Dinei Mamanis, but in Dinei Nefashot, as we saw, an aid, even an aid in potential, cannot become a dayan because we're pasking according to Rabbi Akiva. So let's sum up the question, the Tosfot here, and sum all the things that we learned about an aid and a dayan? When can an aid become a dayan? According to the Tosfot. So when does an aid become a dayan? If we're talking about a hurt for a person's body, which means chabalot or or killing somebody by accident or killing somebody on purpose, all this area of hurting somebody's body, here we have a machlokes between Rabbi Akiva and Rabbi Tarfon. Rabbi Tarfon thinks a person who saw such an event, who's an aid in potential, can choose if he's an aid or a dayan. Rabbi Akiva says, no, no, no. When it comes to seeing somebody hurt another person, he's too much involved, and therefore, if he saw the situation, he cannot become a dayan. That is true in anything that is hurting a person's body. But if we go to other adios, which talk about mamanas or talk about the moon or anything else, there an aid can become a dayan, but only if he decided not to be an aid in fact. If he decided to become an aid and to stand in front of Beit Din and to take the chair of an aid, he cannot become a dayan. Only an aid in potential can become a dayan. When can a person be two roles at the same time? That's in Dinei Rabbanan. But in the Oraisa, you have a moment of choice before you speak. Once you've spoken, you cannot go back. Why is that? The Tosfot gave us two different explanations. One, Rashbam says it's Gzerat HaKatuv. And two, we learned the idea that in Eidus D'Oraita, the Eidim have to be open to Eidim that will come and say that they're liars. And if a person is an Eid and a Dayan, he will never accept other Eidim to come and frame him as a liar. So these are two different reasons that the Tosfot stated in Ketubas. What we did today is to learn one Rishon, which is the Tosfot, of how he reads the Sugya, and we saw that even though we read Rabbi Akiva in one way, the Tosfot that knows both Makas and Baba Kama told us that we read Rabbi Akiva in a wrong way. The Rabbi Akiva does not talk only about somebody who's killing someone on purpose, which we have a problem of aid becoming a dayan. Anything that has to do with hurting a person's body is problematic. We also learned from the Tosfot that there's an area that even if a person is actually being an aid, he can change seats. That's in Dinei D'Rabbanan. In the Oraisa, said the Tosfot, you have to choose sides, either because it's Gzerat HaKatuv or because you have to be able to accept aidim that will say that you're a liar. Shekoyach for your limud. This was a little harder than usual, but I hope you have enjoyed it and you will continue learning b'bkius and b'iyun. Behatzlacha and yishar koach.